In the last lecture, you learned 11 tips for writing magnetic headlines. I gave you the tools to really practice those headlines and also places that you can look for inspiration, and also then the formulas that you can use and the tips to really write magnetic headlines. Now that was really the most important part of our AIDA formula, the formula that we're using to structure powerful sales copy. And that really finished off with attention. Now in this lecture, we're going to cover interest, desire, and action. And this is really the remaining parts of the formula. We spent a lot of time on attention because it is the most important part of copywriting. If you can't get their attention and get them into the top of this funnel, then you will not have success with the other parts. So we spent 80% of our time talking about AIDA or talking about attention, because that is the most important part to work on. But now that you're confident with that, the next step is really to move on to interest. And I think a great way to think about these next two steps are to look at them like this. I think what I was confused about before was, what's the difference between interest and desire? Where does interest start and desire stop? I think an easy way to think about this is, first, you've got to really connect with the problem. If you want to get their interest, the first thing that you have to do is really connect with their problem. Show that you understand their problem so that they know that what you're even talking about is relevant to them. So that's how you really get their interest. And then in order to get their desire, you've got to make them really feel the transformation that your solution is going to offer. So another way that people structure presentations is problem solution. And I think that really fits in nicely here. You show the problem to get their interest, and then you can really get their desire by making them feel the transformation that your solution gives it. So that's the way I think about it. That's my little spin on it. And I hope that helps you understand it a bit better. So how do you really understand their problem, or how do you show that you understand their problem? Well, one thing you can do, and it's very easy, is to share your personal experience. You may have some personal experience with the problems that you encountered, that they're encountering, and that's a very easy way to really create more rapport with your readers. Another thing that you can do is share customer stories. Like you could be selling a piece of software, and you could say, Mary, who's a manager, was having XYZ problem, and they can really identify, yes, I'm similar to her and I have those problems as well. Another thing that you can do is really share fictional stories. So you can make it entertaining and use humor. And one good example that I came across before that did that is this article here, the headline, how to develop your buyer persona and reel in better customers. And he gets straight into it with a very interesting question, and then a kind of a story, a fictional story, to really keep your interest. So he talks about, if you wanted to catch a fish, how would you do it? And then he really talks about the problem. Well, you could throw a line in the ocean and hope for the best. And that is really the problem that people have in terms of developing the buyer persona, not having a strategy or a way to do it. And so he sets up the problem, helps you identify with it and understand it, and then he goes on to give the solution later on. Now, another way that you can really show that you understand their problem is to share other people's stories. Here's a great example of that. This is a blog post by James Clear, and it's not so much a sales letter, but I think he uses the technique here, and it's a good example. So here's the headline: this coach improved every tiny thing by 1%, and here's what happened. So in 2010, David faced a tough job. So straight away he's talking about, and this is really relevant for anybody who's faced a tough job. So that's the problem that he's really identified. He's connected with the problem because he's showing a story about Dave, who also faced a tough job. So you know that if you've had a tough job, or you're experiencing a tough job, or you're going to be having a tough job, this could be something that's going to be relevant. And here's really the tough job: that no British cyclist had ever won the Tour de France. So nobody had ever done this before. How was he going to find a solution? That's something that the readers of this blog might be facing themselves. And then he really gets into the the approach and how he actually went about resolving that tough job and doing something that nobody had ever done before. So I think those are some interesting examples about showing that you understand the problem. Another one that you might be more familiar with is, say, those infomercials on TV. They start off, they're black and white, the person looks depressed, they highlight some of the problems very quickly, and it becomes easy to identify with those problems. And then they set it really up for the next step, which is to create some desire and make the person really feel the transformation. So that's what you want to do after you have really connected with their problem. And what you want to do is really build interest for your solution and show how it can really solve their problem. The end goal is to really cause a shift in their mind and get them to start imagining themselves in your solution. And I think one common mistake when you're trying to really make them feel the transformation is to sell the product features rather than the benefits for the customer. So if you really want to make people feel that transformation and what the solution feels like, talking about the product features is not really going to help them do that. For example, there's a famous drill example. People don't buy a drill to have a drill. They buy a drill because they need a 3/4 inch hole in the wall. That's really the benefit for them. And even going further on that, they buy a drill because they want to fix things around the house. They want to feel like they have those skills. And for a man, it might be they want the wife to compliment them and to feel like a handyman. So those are some of the benefits, and the point there is really to focus less on all of the great things about your product and more about how the product will make the visitor's life better and how it will make the visitor really feel. And I think that goes back to some of the very basics of marketing. It's really all about them and what you can do for them. It's not so much about your product and how great it is. It's all really about them and the solution and the transformation that it can make for them. So that really, now once you've presented the problem and you have showed them the solution to their problem, the next step is really action. This is the final step in the AIDA process. And what you want to do is really lead your readers to action. The CTA, the call to action, is the final instruction for your reader. You've worked hard by now. You've got their attention, you've hooked their interest, you've created desire. So isn't it appropriate really to ask for action now? And here's really 5 tips to create an irresistible call to action. The first thing is really to have a call to action, and not only have it, but have it on every single page. Everything that you should write should have a call to action. After all, you're creating that content for a specific reason. So what else I would suggest is to start with a command verb like buy, shop, order, download, subscribe, watch, share, fill in the form, find out how, and really direct people with a command to what the next step should be. You can also create some urgency and use some discrete measurements of time in your call to action. Phrases like click now, try our software today, offer expires in this date, and to show them really how easy and immediate some of those actions will be. One other tip is to really use contrasting colors to draw attention to that call to action, and that can be simply something like a bolded piece of text, or you could actually add in additional colors to really make it stand out. The final tip is to really use a no obligation statement that removes or reduces risk. So I'll give you an example of this plus the other tips here, and it's really from Udemy itself. They use a call to action called take this course rather than buy now. So here's an example of that. It's actually a free course. So this is start learning now. So they're starting with that command verb. They're using that urgency now. It's in a green button. It really pops off the page. The call to actions in a very visible location as well on this sales page. So there's an example of really the call to action, and really the script is in the video here and also down below. So for a sales page like this, the setup is very similar. There's the headline, the interest and the desire will be created in the video, and then the call to action will be at the end. To recap then, in this lecture you learned that after you get the reader's attention, the next step is to get their interest. And the way that you can get their interest is really by connecting with their problem, showing that you understand their problem, and the way that you can highlight that is really by telling stories of personal experience, customer stories, fictional stories, or other people's stories. After you have their interest and have identified the problem that they have, the next step is to start to show them the solution and really get them to want and desire the solution that you have. The way that you do that is really make them feel that transformation and really seeing the benefits of your product rather than just the features. After you have presented the solution and showed them how it's going to make them feel, the next step is to really lead them towards action. And you can lead them towards that action with these call to actions. You should have a call to action for every page. Start them with a command verb and make it stand out. Use colors to really make it pop off the page. You can also use these no obligation statements like take this course, start learning now, to really reduce the risk of people getting started. So that really wraps up on the interest, attention, and action. And in the next lecture now, let's pull everything together and really recap on how you can implement this for yourself.